Welcome to Beauty and the Biz. Discover how to grow your practice with effective cosmetic patient attraction, conversion, and retention advice from author, speaker, trainer, and cosmetic practice business and marketing coach, Catherine Maley, MBA.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to give them more patients and more profits. Now today, I have a very distinguished guest, and his name is Dr. Gregory Buford. He's a board-certified plastic surgeon in private practice in Inglewood, Colorado. And just a little trivia. Inglewood, Colorado, he will tell you on his website that he's just minutes away from the Denver Tech Center. Well, I'm in San Francisco with the Silicon Valley, and I thought, what tech center I didn't even know you had one. Well, it turns out you have 8 big companies there, and who's the big one? Zoom. And that's the platform we're using for this. And you are in a perfect place if Zoom's going to grow their facilities there. Good time to be there, good real estate pick. So Dr. Buford is renowned for his expertise in breast enhancement, and he's performed more than 4,000 breast-related procedures for patients all over the world. Now, he's a speaker, consultant, and advisor for several industry vendors and media outlets, as well as a member of the Real Self Business Advisory Board to improve their tools, services, and community. Dr. Buford has won Doctor's Choice and Top Doc awards and has enjoyed tons of PR, both from the plastic surgery industry as well as the consumer media channels such as Vogue, ABC News, and Fox TV. Now, he's also an author of 2 books. I don't know where he's finding the time to do all this, but one of the books is called Eat, Drink, Heal, and that's to help consumers with their post-op recovery. And then he wrote Beauty and the Business before that, and that focused on great results and delivering a quality customer experience. So I was thinking we have to merge together Beauty and the Business book, his book, and then my Beauty and the Biz podcast, and we're in business. So welcome to Beauty and the Biz, Dr. Buford. It's a pleasure to have you.
Catherine, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on here.
Sure. So let's just start with, how did you end up, I know you grew up on the West Coast. How did you end up there to a plastic surgeon in Colorado?
My modeling career and my astronaut career didn't work out. I had to choose, a second or a third choice. No, all jokes aside, what's really interesting, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I was at the age of 4, I told my parents to call me Dr. Bill.
Oh my God.
That my lunchbox was my medical bag. I got a stethoscope, and I told people in the grocery stores, I'm Dr. Bill. I mean, I have no idea what inspired that. I have no one in the family that is in medicine. And along the path, though, I took a very circuitous route. You'd think that I studied all sciences and so forth. Mm-hmm. I ultimately attended University of California, San Diego, wonderful university. And I was actually an English major. I actually went through a humanities education, and I double minored in biology and chemistry. But I really wanted those years to basically soul search, to build myself as a person, to really be able to research things that I would not be able to do down the road. So I got the science, but I also got the writing. And as you can tell from the books, and I'm about to release another book, so stay tuned. But those things have enabled me to, I think, communicate better, and also too to enrich myself as a human being and really enjoy and embrace what I do in my practice more richly than if I was just looking at it from just a standard technical aspect. So that's kind of where I got to in a professional manner. In terms of how I ended up in Colorado, long time ago I was married. My ex's sister lived here. I was training at the Cleveland Clinic, and obviously in Cleveland, Ohio, and we visited out here, and it was just wonderful. I mean, people were really happy. I mean, they actually liked to be here. They couldn't wait for the weekends, but a lot of them even during the week, there were sporting events. There was skiing, there was running, there was hiking. People here are very happy. I just fell in love, and so growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I grew up just outside of Portland, Oregon, in a small town called Lake Oswego. This type of environment resonated with me because if you go out to the Pacific Northwest, I mean, it's a very similar mentality. You know, people love to be outside. They love their wine, and now that's really grown up. They love cooking. They're very much into the arts. Colorado really kind of resonated with me because it really reminded me, very much mirrored what I had grown up in, but actually on a different level. I think Colorado is now, all due respect to all my friends in Portland, I think Colorado has passed Oregon by. I really do. I think that the state has grown, unfortunately. And those of you who are thinking about moving here, it's horrible. People are mean. It's horrible weather. So don't move here. All joking aside, it's gotten very crowded because people are finding out. I mean, it actually really is a lovely place to work. So, I mean, that's basically how I ended up here. I actually, for a time, I was about this close to going to Beverly Hills. So I would have become, another plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, which, as we all know, what the world needs is another plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. So I didn't, I looked at everything. My gut said, you know what, it's not the right time. And I'm glad I stayed here. And now I've been able to spend more time not only focusing on my business, but also launching other business. I'm in the process not only of launching this other book, but I'm also launching a business called the Core Aesthetics Training Institute, which is going to offer high level training to medical providers in a number of areas. And we're also in conversation right now with some of the medical device companies, with big pharma. They want to basically coordinate because there's not a lot of concepts like that. So I basically, as you pointed out, I really don't sleep. I'm on the go all the time. It's probably my undiagnosed ADD, but I love it. It keeps me vibrant. It keeps me young. It'll be my birthday this weekend. I'll be 54, and I don't feel like I'm in my 50s. I still feel like I'm in my 30s, and so that's kind of how I got here, and why I love living in Colorado and love what I do in Colorado.
Now, did you ever practice anywhere else but Colorado? And did you always go in solo practice, or did you first join like everyone else does? They try to partner with somebody, or they join a group and they finally are exasperated and go out on their own. How did that work out for you?
So I was actually in a group. I was in a group for a while, and until about 5 years ago, when that was the only reason we changed actually is the lease was up. So we were like, well, do we want to stay together? And honestly, with all due respect to my previous partners, great people, but different mindsets, and I wanted to go on my own. So in going on my own, I really for years, I'm all about branding. I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart as well too, but when I wrote Beauty in the Business, it was all about establishing a customer centric business. And it was all about why the importance of branding. And as you know, we as physicians, nurses, PAs, none of us really getting any training in that.
Zero.
Because we're taught erroneously that medicine is not a business. I'll tell you a little story. It was a secret, but the reason I named my book Beauty in the Business, I was rounding. Okay? I was rounding with one of my chief residents and some mentors, some peers when I was at the Cleveland Clinic, and I said, I mentioned, well, tell me about the business of medicine, and I get this really kind of weird look, and they said, Dr. Buford, medicine is not a business.
Wow.
And at that point, I knew one that okay, I'm not doing academics because of that kind of mindset. No way. And with all due respect, these are great people, but we don't think of medicine as a business. And until we think of medicine as a business, we're not going to be able to run it. I always say you either run your business or your business runs you. So unless you have a handle and you're proactive and you know where you want to take it, you have a roadmap, you have a vision, and that's not just financial vision, but also too a vision of how you want to create culture. Okay, corporate culture within is so important. So that's really kind of been the guiding force for me. So I was in group practice for a while, now I'm in private practice, and and also too, I will point out, I'm actually in the process of moving in a couple months. I just bought a new office condo, so I'll have this small little building, and we're building that out. We're putting the training center in that. I'm always looking at ways to expand myself, to learn, to enrich, and basically be able to provide the best quality results and the best quality experience as well too for my clients.
Oh.
So I think it's really when it comes down, it's kind of like Starbucks. When I used to speak on marketing and so forth, I usually would ask people a question. I would say, So who in the audience, raise your hand if you go to Starbucks to buy coffee. And of course, everyone's raising their, oh yeah, we love Starbucks coffee. To which I would say, every single one of you is wrong. Okay. Every single one of you is wrong. And I think you probably know where I'm going with this. You're not buying coffee at Starbucks. You're buying an experience. It's experiential marketing, and it's brilliant. It's just like Nordstrom's. Okay, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, the birthplace of Nordstrom's. I remember every Christmas, they would have the piano player, and they'd have all these things that you always thought of it as Nordstrom's. The people would walk around the desk, hand you the items that you just bought. Look at how many companies do that now. They didn't do that before. They stole that from Nordstrom's. Ritz Carlton, you and I were having a conversation about that as well too. That's another amazing brand. I mean, I basically try to emulate these brands, figure out what have they done well, and how can I do it even better? How can I translate that and take that from the hotel industry, the food industry, the travel industry, and bring that in some way, shape, or form into the medical industry, into the aesthetic industry. And I'll tell you, once you start thinking like that, it's amazing how your business just thrives. Because patients absolutely love it. They don't want just results; they want an experience. So that's kind of a little bit of my mantra, and a little bit of my approach to business, so to speak.
So for your practice, are you the only revenue producing person, or do you have, like, how are you set up business wise, the structure?
Right. So what I did is I came from a very bloated practice,
Okay.
a very, honestly, a very inefficient practice. And what I did is when I went solo, I said, okay, I'm going to really, really get narrow. I'm going to pay down all this stuff and so forth. And then I had a little extra time on my hands, so I did this program. Big shout out to a program called Physician CEO. It's a wonderful program run by Guy Kazarian at Northwestern. Actually, it's at the Kellogg School of Management. So I basically got like a little mini MBA. What I learned there is I was too efficient. I wasn't leveraged enough. I wasn't taking risks. I wasn't using extenders. So the first thing I did when I got back is I started resorting. And COVID actually helped me in some ways because it helped me clean out. It helped me weed out staff that I really didn't need. I brought on a fabulous PA. I just brought on a fabulous RN. She's wanting to do injections. My PA's ramping up her business at lightning speed. And so what I'm doing is I'm really building out the training aspect, and I'm building out the extenders because, quite honestly, in the future, I don't want to be working in my business. I want to be working on my business, and I want to be able to leverage my time because, in all honesty, time, as Steve Jobs once said, is it's one of the most valuable resources. You can never get it back, and you can never buy more. So to me, with that being the most valuable asset, I've got to identify what am I doing per unit time. And most important, and I think this is really the golden question, it's not about how much you make, it's do you really like what you're doing?
Yep.
If you died today, if you went home today and you fall down dead, are you happy that you enjoyed working with your clients? You were in an industry where you really liked it. And I'm not naive enough to try to say that every day is a joy. I mean, there are days when I think, you know what, that astronaut position would have been a lot easier, except for my fear of heights. That kind of got in the way. But it's really, honestly, I surround myself with wonderful clients. I have a saying in my office. I only work with people I like, and I'm at a position in my life now where, I can do that. And it's crazy. Once you start kind of weeding out the negatives, the people that are the energy vampires, the people that are not there to help you, and you start bringing the people that are like, hey, you know what? I really want to work with you, and it's a two-way street. You did this for me. I'm going to help you build this by referrals and so forth. Those people are such a joy to work with. It makes going to work fun, which, ultimately, you can't pay me enough to go to work every day with complaining patients. If that's the case, I don't want to do it. I want no part of that.
Do you have any tips for hiring? How are you finding these people, and then how are you motivating them? Because I find hiring, I think I'm a pretty good people person, or I've got some pretty good people skills, and I've been hiring forever, and I still can't sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. You just don't know. But
Well,
I've gotten a lot better as I've gotten older. But
right.
any pearls on your end?
I mean, I would say go with your gut. I mean, I'm getting
Yeah.
better and better at it. My practice, here's an interesting thing. My practice manager, Jennifer, okay, Jen, shout out to Jen. Jen is, I mean, she's a rock star. She has been with me from day one.
Nice.
She actually started at front desk.
Mm-hmm.
She moved her way up, and now she's my boss.
Yep.
I mean, she's awesome. But I hire people and I tell them, you know, when you join us, my goal is ultimately that you outgrow your position. Yeah, and I mean that. You know, and I have had people leave because they say, you know what, I'm going on to bigger and better things. And I'm like, hey, that's great. I'm so proud that I was actually able to potentially be a catalyst in terms of building you to this point. And now you're jumping off and you're leaving the nest. I'm like, that's great. You know, no love lost. And I mean that in a positive way. You got to do that. You got to let people stretch their arms. You don't want to limit people and say, you know, this is all you can do, and you know, and don't do it. It's, you know, let's grow you. Let's grow you and see what you can do. Because that's what my whole mantra. I mean, I've always felt like I was the underdog. I'm like, you know, I may not have been the smartest in the room, but I can tell you, I'm one of the hardest, and I'm a scrapper. Yep. You know, and if someone works 10 hours, darn it, I'm going to work 20 hours. You know, I'm going to figure out what someone does, and I'm going to do it better. And that's my secret success. But also important to that as well too is you really truly you have to be honest. You have to do it because you really enjoy doing it. And I think you can probably see, and those of you guys who are watching now, I've got passion. I mean, this is not, you know, I'm not, no disrespect, Catherine, I'm not getting paid anything for this. You know, what I'm doing is I'm paying it forward because I really enjoy doing this. And if any of this information can help someone else out there, you know, take that next step and say, hey, you know what? I was really scared about launching this. I'm going to do that. That Buford guy seems a little wacky maybe, but you know, he's done well for himself. And I'll tell you, it's taking that next step. One of my favorite quotes: "Journey to 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And it really it's powerful. Or as this little company called Nike once said, "Just do it. Yep. Just do it." You know, and those are powerful statements. And it just says, you know, envision, build a vision, but ultimately don't have that paralysis of analysis where you're thinking about something over and over and over again. Well, maybe it's going to be perfect. There is no perfect timing. There never will be perfect timing. I'm buying an office building during the COVID crisis. Right. Are you kidding me? I'm launching a new company in the middle of COVID. People think I'm nuts, but guess what? Crazy times call for crazy actions. And these are the times when with change that I think we're gonna see a whole different way of interacting with people in all different sectors. I mean, not just medicine, in all different sectors. And I think we're shaking out some of the very archaic manners with which we interacted with our clients, interacted with other people in the workplace. And I think ultimately, I actually think we're going to be stronger. We're looking and saying, you know, we're demonstrating resilience. But unfortunately, a lot of weaker companies, and these are big companies, have been shaken off. And it's really sad. But during these times, I encourage people to take those risks. I mean, could you lose? Yeah, you can always lose. But here's the thing. You can also win as well, too. And some of the biggest some of the biggest winners had the biggest losses. I mean, look at Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was consistently losing. I mean, you know, not only losing family members, dying, I mean, losing Senate races, doing all kinds of things. I mean, you know, and falling flat on his face. Now, his ending wasn't exactly the most positive way to go out. But I mean, he made his mark on history. And here's a guy that consistently lost. There's a lot of people out there. I mean, I guarantee you, Elon Musk, I mean, as successful as he is, he's failed in a number of ways. You know, so you look at people like Bill Gates. You know, we talked about Elon Musk, Richard Branson. I mean, to name a few. I mean, these guys are revolutionary, and they're revolutionary. A great book. I'll tell you. Richard Branson's autobiography was ingenious. I mean, this guy has such a zest for life. You know, you may not agree with his politics, you may not agree with some of the things he does, but you have to give him credit. I mean, this guy takes risks. I mean, this guy is crazy. He jumps off buildings to promote Virgin products. You know, he does all this nutty stuff because the guy is like, he's like a little kid.
May I interrupt for a second? Do you remember what happened when he was a little kid? Under 5 years old, his mother drives him to some kind of a forest, drops him off, and says, "Find your way home."
Oh, I think I heard that story.
Yes,
Actually.
that is, I think, why he has no fear, because he conquered that early on, where the rest of us were playing it safe. And as we got older, we still wanted to play safe. I think that had a lot to do with it. Good for him.
I also think too. I mean, and I've actually said this. I had the opportunity to speak to the UCSD honor students a couple weeks ago. They were
Nice.
talking about change, and what I said is, great leaders are great readers.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a little bit biased, but if you look at some of the greatest leaders, okay, they are avid readers, but they read from all different sectors. They don't just read. It's like, for me, I don't read much about medicine. I mean, I keep up on the medical trends and lasers and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I read a bunch of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I read about musicians. I read about artists. I read about culture. I read about whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's crazy is, so many of these things that are seemingly disparate, you find there's universality.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that you go, hey, you know what? I can translate that into my space, and I can create what is called blue ocean. Blue ocean is an area where, there's not a lot of competition. You're creating something like, good example, Cirque du Soleil.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? And unfortunately, Cirque du Soleil, is a tragedy, because they actually filed for bankruptcy.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
them.
Oh, they're amazing. But what is Cirque du Soleil? It's a combination. It's dance, it's
Mm-hmm.
theater, it's music. I mean, it's
athletics.
It's cinema, it's athletics, and it's all combined. Two Canadians brought this together, and it was ingenious, and they created this whole new thing. To do that, you've got to be passionate,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got to think out of the box. And I know that sounds very trite, because everyone always says, think out of the box, think out of the box, think out of the box. But it's true, because in medical school, we're told, think within the box. Don't disagree with this. This is science. You're not supposed to disagree with this. Well, that's a bunch of what.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're going to replicate what everyone else has done, go take a nap. That's boring. That's boring. That's peanut butter and jelly without the jelly. So that's really not exciting. What is exciting, though, is, when you come to the table and you say, hey, this is a new way of taking care of patients. This is a new way of providing aesthetic services. This is a whole new way of, approaching the client-physician interaction. Once you start thinking that way, you completely change how you practice. And I think you become a better doctor, a better nurse, better PA, what have you. And a better person, really. And you have more fun with it, too.
Do you think surgeons who have been around are capable of making that mindset shift? Because a lot of them that I know, because I've been hanging around with them for 20 years, they just want to hide in the OR. They don't want to do all of this business stuff. They want it to go away, and they want to abdicate if at all possible. So, I mean, what would you recommend somebody like that do?
Retire.
Yeah. I don't see how you can compete in today's world without understanding the business and the marketing side of this.
I mean, here's the thing. The kids that are coming, I say they're kids. I mean,
yeah.
I'm going to be 54 this weekend, so they're like kids. But I applaud them, because they're looking at things in very different ways. They're challenging the status quo. You can't do the same thing over and over again. I mean, and especially I think surgeons, we're so programmed that we learn a procedure and we get it done, and we do our 10,000 hours, if you believe in that. We do our 10,000 hours and suddenly we're amazing. Well, I mean, I'd encourage you one day, you know what? I'll give you a good example. I do a lot of facial injections. Whenever I get a chance, I mean, I spend time with other people that do facial injectables. Why? Is it that I don't understand how to do it? No. I want to challenge myself.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see, what are they doing? Are they doing something better? And then I just steal their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I blatantly just say, hey, I'm assimilating this. My PA and I have great chemistry. I mean, we'll see patients together, and I'll be like, what do you do? Or, she'll have me see one of her patients. And it's great because you learn from each other. And life is too short to have a practice that's static. It needs to be dynamic. Now, it needs to be dynamic to a certain sense, because you don't want to change on a daily basis. I mean, that's basically ADD. I mean, that's uncompromised. That's not focused. That's unbridled, just disaster waiting to happen. It's entropy. But when you have a chance, so to just basically say, let's shake this up. let's do like Gates does. Go out. I don't know if you know the story. He goes out in the middle of the woods, the Pacific Northwest, every year. He has 2 weeks. He has 1 week times two. That he goes out. The only person he takes with him is his assistant who cooks food for him, as well as brings his Diet Orange Crush, which is can't believe the guy who drinks that crap. But anyway, he brings that out and he isolates himself and he does a digital cleanse and all he does is read. It's insane, but it makes so much sense, and he challenges himself. And there's a lot of other people, same thing that know a lot because they basically, they don't stay tethered and they don't stay within their own lane. They think out of the box, but they're not staying in their own lane. Staying in their own lane is safe. That's safe. But I'll tell you, we don't have a long time in this world, and I've learned, you've got to make the most of it. And you got to have fun. You got to challenge things. You got to shake things up a little bit.
So for for the business side of this, what would you say was the biggest challenge for you and then the lesson you got out of it? I'm sure you've made some bad hires or bad equipment decisions, or what was the tough stuff?
I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, don't take it personally.
Oh,
Okay,
that's good. That's the 4 agreements with Miguel Ruiz.
Right.
Don't
right.
take it personally. Yeah.
Right.
Isn't that the truth?
Everybody. I don't care how smart you are going to screw up.
Right.
And when you screw up, when you fail, and I actually mentioned this when I gave the UCSD commencement address. I said, when you fail, that failure is not your end point; it is your starting point. And I truly believe that. That's a launch pad. That's a pivot. That's going from A to B, and then switching over to B prime, and then going from B prime to C, and then saying, hey, is this a direction? It's a great book out there I read. It's called Little Bets. Little Bets is all about, how people basically, they take little bets and they say, let's go in this direction. Jeff Bezos, for example, he didn't start Amazon to be what it is now. It was nowhere near that. It was just an online bookseller. It was basically just selling books. Now look he's selling toilet paper, tampons, and tequila. The guy sells everything.
I can't live without him.
No, he's changed the world, and he wanted to start this little online bookstore. But he pivoted. He realized that this initial idea was really good, but what happens if we go this way? And I guarantee you, he failed along the way. He made mistakes along the way. But the key thing is he learned. Okay, he learned what he did wrong, and he didn't take it personally. You can't. There's a difference between failing and being a failure. Okay, you're not just because you failed doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you screwed up. It means you screwed up. How many startups have you seen that they basically they stay around too long? They don't know when to end or what have you because they're afraid to fail. They're afraid to just unplug, and move on to the next thing. It's the same thing in medicine. Don't be afraid of challenging yourself. Now, in terms of hiring and firing, that's a good question. I don't think that I'm perfect at that. I'm probably a little naive. I try to go with a gut instinct. I would rather hire a good person than a great salesperson with no heart. Because ultimately, I can teach most people how to sell,
right?
But I can't give them a heart. I'm not the wizard. So if you don't have a heart or brain or whatever, I can't give it to you.
Yeah.
So if you come with that though, and you're willing to be trained, then I'm willing to do that. And I think people also too embrace culture as well too. There's a saying that culture eats protocols and processes for breakfast. In other words, you can have all the protocols, you can have all the rules in your office, but if you don't have a heart, if you don't have an idea of what you want the company to be and who you want it to be for, you're just treading water in place with a weight around your leg. That's just, it's not going to help you at all. You're not going to, and it's not fun.
So when it comes to scaling, and because a lot of the surgeons I'm working with are definitely getting older and they're thinking about their exit strategies. And by the way, you don't think about it a year before you exit. You think about it 10 years before. Right. You need some time to figure this out. Yep. Your timing is perfect. So then you say, okay, how do you scale this? Do you bring on more surgeons? Do you bring on more PAs or RNs? Do you go into other businesses like you've done? Do you go into real estate, So do you have a theory at all on how do you exit this thing with like a sellable asset? How are you going to do that?
Right. Well, first of all, I don't ever plan to retire. I
Okay.
mean, and I know everyone's like, yeah, you're a moron. No, I'm
Oh,
not.
I would never retire.
Honestly, I mean, I some of the favorite things to do in life. I love to travel. I love to cook. I love to take photos. Okay, and I love to play the piano and do all that kind of fun stuff. But I mean, ultimately, I like what I do, and I love consulting. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing more and more consulting. So, it'll be probably in my late 60s. I won't be in the OR, anymore. I'll probably be doing some injections and so forth. But at that point, I want to be working more on the business than in the business. So, to answer your question, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to basically build out processes, in a culture within the business that I can grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to be the only one growing. I need my staff growing as well, too, because if it's just me steering,
Mm-hmm.
that's a heavy load. That's a heavy load. You've got to have buy-in from your staff. Now, that doesn't mean that all your staff's going to be bought in, but having your staff understand, appreciate, and assimilate that vision and that mission, and live it on a daily basis, patients pick up on that and you grow your business. People pick up on it. I mean, I look at other sectors, look at Steve Jobs. I mean, as a person, a human being, probably wasn't a real super nice guy, but as a visionary, I mean, that guy had vision. I mean, that guy literally upended the entire sector that he was in. He changed it forever.
He
And it's
literally knew what we didn't even know we needed or wanted.
exactly
Unbelievable.
right.
Mm.
It's like Henry Ford said, you don't ask people what they want because he goes, if I ask them what they want, they'd want a horse. So you don't, it's not always, it's the whole thing because customers are always are always right. That's not necessarily true. They're not always right. I mean, we're the professionals because we actually know what they need. We listen to them, what their goals are. But, when someone comes in and tells me, well, okay, and we're getting this more and more, you need to inject here, you need this. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
stop right there. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a master trainer. I've trained all over the world. I've trained all over the states, and I'm here to help you, but I'm not here to have you guide me. I don't go to my CPA or my attorney or what have you and say, hey, by the way, this is how you want to draw things up. I tell them what I need. I tell them what I want, and they tell me how to get from point A to point B. And ultimately, that's what we're here for as well, too, as professionals. But I think that with all due respect to older surgeons, I mean, it was a different world.
Mm-hmm.
It was a different world. You didn't have patients asking questions. I mean, now patients come in, and they've all apparently graduated from Google University because they can go on their browser and they're just as smart as I am, which gets frustrating at times because you have to unlearn that. You have to say, look, this is not Jeopardy, and it's not Jeopardy where you can throw out unrelated facts and things. You need to string them together, and that's wisdom. That's knowledge. The difference is just being able to pull stuff off the internet. That's trivia. That's trivia. That's not truly understanding things. I mean, I can't build a rocket ship if I just go and Google how to build a rocket ship. I've got to know the physics. I've got to know rocketry. I've got to know all these things. And I've got to be able to know how to assimilate it. And you can't just look that stuff up. So, I think that's frustrating for a lot of the older physicians because, I mean, the times have definitely changed. And they change on a number of different levels too, and also too, we're not only competing within our own space. I mean, for the most part, we're competing across the United States, and we're competing globally as well too. It's crazy. We're so with Zoom and with Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. I mean, I've got Instagram followers from India. I mean, I've got followers from Europe. I've got followers from South America. It's not because I'm anyone famous or like that, because I follow them too. I mean, I think it's cool. I want to see what guys are, what are Indian plastic surgeons doing? I mean, what's important to them? How are the trends? And it's really become a very global world and it's changing. I would say right now in the past, things changed linearly. And if you talk to most futurists, they'll tell you now, change is occurring logarithmically. I mean, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, just being here for 20 years, I'm shocked at what I have lived through in this industry when I first started here in San Francisco. And now I probably have almost as big an international audience as I do
Right.
domestic. They
Right.
love America. They think we are crazy here, the way we market and do business. But they're fascinated and they're learning fast. And I think to the older surgeons or just the surgeons who are closed minded, you're going to get eaten up by those who are open to learning and growing. But anyway, let's switch gears to marketing, because one of the ways you got on my map or my radar many years ago, your website popped up. I'm not sure how, but you had actual patients on your homepage. And I had been saying that forever. I said, why in the world would you put all those models who nobody ever looks like that, and they're literally 20 years old and they don't have a pimple? It just pisses off the rest of us, you know. So I used to
Right.
think, be authentic. That's the way to go. And it was so cool. You obviously had done like a photo shoot with them, and they all had on black turtlenecks and jeans, and they were real women, and they weren't like Barbie doll gorgeous. They were normal. Did you get really good feedback from that? I hope so, because as a cosmetic patient
Well,
looking on,
I hate to say it, we've
kudos.
since changed, we've since changed, updated the
I
look.
saw it.
But all I'll say though, I mean, those were, to your point, I mean, 100%. Those were all real
Loved
patients,
it.
real people, not Photoshop. And really, the reason we put them on there is, we want that. We want
Yeah.
people when they walk into our office. I want people to know that we're real.
Hmm.
It's funny because I remember a journal club that I was at a couple years ago here in Denver. We were talking about social media, and several of the older surgeons were like, "Well, I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing privately and so forth."
Right.
I'm like, well, that's good because you're going to be out of business in about 5 years because people really want to know who you are. Now, I mean, the problem is now, I mean, it's gotten to a point where we're almost sharing too much
Right.
information. But I mean, I carefully filter what I put out there.
Hmm.
If you look on my Instagram, there are some really, really stupid pictures. I mean, of my cat with a martini, or I'm making short ribs or whatever.
No, I love
Right,
it. You
right,
can tell you like to cook, you like wine, you like
right,
skiing, you like hanging with the family.
right,
Yeah, I know you had a very nice balance of personality, because
right,
that's what you need in today's world. The cosmetic patient wants to know, who are you? Who are
right.
you? Not just as a surgeon, but as a person, as a spouse, as a
Totally
father, as a
totally
cook.
agree. Totally agree 100%. I mean, who are you more likely to come to? Hi, I'm Dr. Buford. I'm blah, 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 blah. I'm just a
Yeah.
bobblehead. And they're like, well, you have as much personality as a rock. Or, hey, like I'll have patients coming in and going, I saw that crazy picture of your cat. Your cat is crazy.
I
I've
love
got a
it.
cat too. I mean, people identify. I
Yeah.
put up I have closed loops in my office of all my travel pictures.
Mm.
People love it. People want to know,
Mhm.
what is it that makes you tick? They want to know, they don't just want to know that you're, a famous Beverly Hills plastic surgeon, blah, blah. I mean, those days are gone. I'm sorry to all my Beverly Hills friends. I mean, those days are gone. You may think that's great, but people really want to know who you are. And it's not about the wealth. It's not about, hey, rah, rah, look at my fancy car. It's, hey, here I am as a person. I have similar wants, needs, desires, and, issues like you have as well, too.
Mhm.
People really want to see that. Now, they don't want to see a really weak, scared surgeon. I mean, you definitely have to kind of maintain that balance because, you have to, people want to have faith in you. They want to, they want to know that you're confident without being arrogant. And there's a big difference about that. Confidence, you can back it up. Arrogance is just that. It's just air. It's hot air.
Do you find sometimes they're too friendly now? Like they feel like they know you so well that when they come in, it's almost like um, a balance between, like they're just having a chit chat with you as a friend, and
Right.
they're almost too familiar with you. Does that ever happen?
Yeah. I mean, so, I always, I do a lot of breast surgery. So I make sure that there's a lot of pictures of the kids, of my fiance
Yeah.
around, so I mean, and honestly, it really rarely gets awkward. But,
Okay.
I want people to know, this is who I am.
Mhm.
When they start to get a little bit too comfortable, then it's like, okay, there's a little bit of a boundary, but
Mhm.
it's a floating boundary. You really have to kind of determine how much of you do you want to show the rest of the world. I mean, I orchestrate what I put out there. I don't put all my photos out there. I mean, and is it fake? No. I mean, I can guarantee. I mean, I can look in the camera and tell every one of you guys watching this right now. I do love to cook. I'm a shameless cat lover.
Mhm.
I love to travel. I love to read books. All the goofy things that we do. I love that. I love it. And so it's not, you've got to be authentic, because if you try to go out there and you have a company that's creating this persona for you,
Mhm.
I mean, you're the Wizard of Oz. Someone's going to pull the curtain back and they're going to go, "Oh, you've just been a big fake the whole time."
Mhm.
People can pull the curtain back on me, and they're going to find is it's the same person behind the curtain as in front of the curtain. I'm basically, letting you in and showing you that this is who I am. And I think it definitely attracts a different type of patient into the office.
Mhm.
But those patients, like I said, I've been really blessed for the most part. Not every single one of them,
Mhm.
but I've had my challenges over the years, just like in any industry. But for the most part, I have long-standing clients. I have clients that follow me and they're like, "Hey, we saw you with the kids and in Mexico. We saw you this. That was so cute.
Mhm.
I've got a 12-year-old too, and blah blah blah." That familiarity with people, it breeds confidence, and it breeds a sense of commitment to the practice, because people know who you are. You're not just, well, your Starbucks location number 345. It's
Mhm.
basically it's Beauty by Buford, it's Dr. Buford, and it's Jen, and it's all my lovely staff. And so people really identify with it, and people stay with us for years.
And would you say, speaking of that, you know how they used to say surgeons will age with their patients, and usually there's like a 10-year span there? Do you find, though, because I know you were heavy on breast dogs when you got started, do you
Right.
find that you're going up the food chain more? So now it's more tummy tuck, but now it's more mommy makeover. Then maybe it's on top left and then facelift. Do you find that you're changing as you get older?
Not really. Not really. I'm just operating on the kids now.
Oh,
No, seriously. I just had a patient come in, just adorable, and she's like, "Yeah, my mom said, she said she'd never get a breast aug and so forth." And then
famous
this
last
this
words.
wonderful woman is graduating from college. Her mom's going to give her the breast aug actually as a gift. And then and she said, "Well, who should I go to?" And she said, "Well, you've got to go to Dr. Buford." But she kind of figured things out. She's like, "Well, how do you know this Dr. Buford guy?" And her mom kind of winked. She said, "Because I went to him about 10 years ago." So I'm getting, that's kind of how it's going. I don't personally. I'm not a big. I'm not a facelift guy. I'm not a neck lift guy. I love doing body contouring.
Mhm.
I love challenging breast cases. That's probably one of my strongest suits. I love doing facial injectables. So I am changing a little bit, but I'm also too making sure I'm staying close to my brand image. What you don't want to do is you've got to determine your brand, and you've got to determine who that brand is for. And first and foremost, you've got to really know who the brand is for, because that's actually how you design the brand. You design that with the colors, the language, and all that kind of stuff. If I'm working with 65-year-olds versus 45-year-olds, and I'm doing facelifts versus breast, I'm going to speak to those patients very, very different,
Mhm.
very, very different. Different language, different tone, different models, obviously. But it's really kind of understanding. To be a leader, you have to understand yourself first and foremost before you can understand, and you got to understand the people around you. But you got to understand yourself, and that's the same thing in running a business like I do. I run a couple businesses, and it's understanding, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And ultimately, why am I doing what I'm doing? And that tells me how much time I want to invest in each of the different businesses.
Are you good at tracking your results? And if so, what's your feeling on patient retention versus, because I feel like I'm beating this drum to death. In today's world, I think it's getting too expensive to attract a new patient. I would spend a lot more of your efforts trying to keep the patient and their friends and
Right.
their reviews and their photos and all of that.
Right.
What's your feeling on that, of how to grow a practice in today's world?
Well, I totally agree with you 100%. The challenge is if you don't have a practice, you've got to grow a
For
practice.
sure.
Obviously. You've got to get those. But they always say, you probably know the numbers better than I do. What is it, like 7 times more difficult to get a new patient than to
No, well, now it's
maintain?
like up to 16 times more because it's so darn crowded, you know?
Right, right. So we have a lot of return patients. We've got a lot of patients that have stuck with us for the years.
Good.
Well, and again, what's the special sauce? This is going to sound like total utter nonsense, but you got to have. They always say it when I was going into medicine. They said, you know what, to be successful, you need to be affable, available, and able. Okay, so those three things.
Mm-hmm.
You do, but you also have to have the emotional intelligence, the EQ, to understand your patients, understand why they're behaving, why they are. And I'm not naive enough to think that I always do, because I don't. I mean, it's human nature, but we try to understand, and we try to create an environment where it attracts people that we want to be with, and that's ultimately it. If you want a bunch of very stuffy people and you want a country club kind of practice, I mean, tear out your flooring, put in marble, put in a bunch of, cheesy statues, and, pull up in a very fancy car and make sure it's known that, you make a lot of money. You're going to attract that kind of people. Those kind of people drive me crazy. I work with a ton of very successful people, but guess what? They come in jeans, and they, and we talk about wine, we talk about travel, but not in a competitive manner, not in a snooty manner. So for those people, know who you want to have. Now, in terms of retaining them, just think about, what's going to make them happy. Design Gifts is a great book called Giftology. It's about gifting, and it shatters a lot of the myths. For example, I mean, what a lot of people do is they give out hats. So I'll give a hat that says Beauty by Buford. Well, guess what? That's the dumbest thing in the world. I mean, last time you got a shirt with someone's business name on it. Do you really want to wear that around? No, you don't want to wear that around. But would you rather get like a really like I love cooking. If someone gave me a knife set that had my monogram on it, I mean, I would be like, wow, that's so cool. If someone gave me a knife set that said, Acne toilet repair, I mean, I'm like, that's so stupid. I mean, it looks like these cheap gag gifts that we get at all the meetings, and we end up throwing in the garbage when we get home. So it's really about, getting back to gifting. It's really about taking those extra steps and trying to understand your client, trying to understand who they are, what they are, what their comfort points are, what their pain points are, how you can function, and how you can meet them in the middle, and how you can serve as a conduit to helping them achieve their very best. And that's really key. It's otherwise we're just a bunch of trained sales monkeys, and that's not fun. But unfortunately, there's a lot of practices that run that way.
Well, regarding marketing, are you doing it a lot differently now than before? And are you spending more now than before?
Oh, yeah. I hired, I'm on my second digital marketing director, and she is an absolute, I'll give her a shout out, Keely. I mean, Keely is just an absolute rock star. And, I don't know how she got to be so good. I mean, I think she's very, very smart. But the nice thing is she assimilated our brand message from day one. Because I told her, I said, this is a look and feel that I want. I don't want to be this arrogant thing. When you look at my Instagram page, it's actually not about me. I mean, a lot of it is not about me. I mean, we try to make it about the patients. If anything, I poke fun at myself. I show pictures of, I got a hair transplant.
I saw that.
Put that up there. I mean,
job.
I'm like, hey, if my patients get it, I'm proud to show it. When my nurses are poking me with, Botox, I take pictures of that, not to say, hey, look at how hot I am. No, it's not that. It's, guess what? I not only inject, but I get injected. I'm a customer too.
It comes across very authentic.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what we're trying to do. It's not a marketing gimmick, but to get back to your question though, yeah, we're spending more, but we're really trying to engage. I mean, it is such a much more, it's a dynamic world. In the past, I mean, we did magazines. Do you know how exciting magazines are? They're this exciting. Nothing. I mean, they stare back at you like a dead body. You can't interact. It's a static interaction. Social media is dynamic and it's ever changing. It's really exciting. And people can ask you questions. You can put up breaking news. We don't do any print advertising whatsoever. I mean, with all due respect, and I won't name the magazines. There's some great magazines out there, but there's also some magazines that just they haven't come across very well over the course of time, and they're still treating people the same way. They're not as dynamic, but there are some magazines that really have done very, very, very well. But we really like social media. I mean, I think social media is it's a very energetic form of interaction. And what I always tell people as well too is print media is a monologue. Print media is a monologue. Social media is a dialogue, and that's a very very important distinguishing factor. Very very important because it's a whole way of interacting with your patients. Now, be careful because if you don't want to hear what they have to say, you better be like those old stodgy physicians and go back to the print because what's someone going to do? Yell at you in a newspaper?
Right.
Whatever. I mean, it doesn't. Or shout and scream at your billboard. Well, guess what? In social media, I mean, they will.
They don't hesitate.
They don't hesitate. Everybody's an expert nowadays.
Yep.
So you got to be very wary of that. But at the same time, I mean, if we get a negative comment, we don't. If it's a really disparaging comment, I take it down. I don't have any place for that. But if someone's saying, "Hey, I really don't see what the difference is," or "That's not a great result," I'm like, you know what? Tell me what your thoughts are, because it engages. And what's crazy is when you actually start listening to people. That's a problem. I mean, I won't get into politics, but none of it. We're too busy shouting. There's an old saying why we have we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Okay, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, and that's to basically listen twice as much as we speak. But unfortunately, you don't do that a lot these days. But social media, it's about putting something out there and being willing to interact with people and engage, even if they don't agree with you.
How much time do you think you're spending on it per day?
Well, Keely does most of it for me. So honestly, I mean, she's doing the really the heavy lifting. She's awesome. I got to a point. I mean, I think you and I have sat on very similar panels and so forth. I used to talk about how, I am so smart about social media. Guess what? I'm not anymore because social media has gone from 0 to 60 so fast. I mean, you know this, you probably know way more about it than I do. It's a full-time job.
Well, when you first did it many years ago, you were on the podium and you said I spend about 15 minutes a day. And I remember thinking, really? 15 minutes? And then now when you go to the meetings, the doctors are literally admitting they're spending hours. Hours a day.
Yeah. Oh, it's not. Yeah, that's kind of humorous. I said that, but I was an early adopter though too.
You were way early on that one.
I was in there before a lot of people were in there, and you could spend 15 minutes because there's not a lot of people at the game, and you could do that. Now you've got to know algorithms, you've got to know things, you've got to know who to like, you've got to know who to connect with, blah blah blah. I mean, that's why I lay out the corporate culture. And I have my marketing director basically do all that stuff, and and I trust her implicitly. She's done a great job. So,
you also did a really good job with your PR. Did you have a PR agency helping you? Because you got some really good play.
Thank you. Combination of things. I mean, I've worked with several publicists, and I mean, now I haven't worked with a publicist for over a decade. I mean, I basically kind of learn what they do, and I'm not trying to disparage them. There's some wonderful publicists out there. But after a while, I realized a lot of what I was doing was an ego play. It was an ego play. I mean, if I get published in the Saudi Arabia Times, who cares? They're not going to take a bus over to Denver and get their Botox for me just because they saw me in the newspaper. So I had to distinguish what was I doing it for? Was it doing it for ego? Was it really building? For me, actually getting up on the podium, and what's crazy is I was terrified during residency of speaking.
Yeah, me too.
When people said, you like public speaking? I'm like, I don't know. And then I got up there. I mean, now I'm actually more nervous when I'm not on the podium. Right. I'm just so nervous. And you've done plenty of public speaking.
But I used to be terrified, and I had to learn, and now I'm very comfortable on the podium, and it's a beautiful place to be for credibility, for sharing, for I like it a lot. I miss it a lot.
Well, I like, another thing I love about it is, I met you, I've met, a ton of people, a ton of peers that, when I go to the meetings, I learn the stuff that no one else does because, I can go to the best and the brightest in lasers, injectable, breast, body, face, and say, hey, what do you think about this? It's, it's not what the reps are telling me. It's not what the media is saying, whatever. I go right to the source. And so because I have this relationship with so many wonderful people, I mean, it really it's helped my patients. because I come back and I'm like, look, I'm helping to launch this product. Here's what's going on, and I'm light years ahead of most of my competition in that sense. And it's not necessarily that I'm any smarter than any of my competition, but I'm a scrapper. I mean, I will work twice as hard. I will do what it takes because I love it. I mean, I see it as I'm very competitive, if you can't already figure out. But for me, it's really fun. It's a game, and the other thing as well too is at the end of the day, I want to leave behind some legacy. I want to, and I said, I know this sounds really corny, but I went with my books and what I've done, and these kind of podcasts. If I can change one person's way of thinking for the better, and they can, and I've had a lot of people come. I had a guy come from at an AED meeting. He called me. He actually emailed me. He said, "Hey, I read Beauty and the Business." He was from China. He's like, "I read Beauty and the Business. I love it. Totally changed the way I do my practice.
Nice.
And here's what I've done." And I was like, I mean, I got goosebumps. I mean, I was like, that's really, really neat. I mean, to know that I've had an impact on him, it was such a positive thing. It was such a positive thing.
Speaking of making an impact, tell us about your mom's cause.
Oh, yeah. So, my mom, and big shout out to Betty B. So she, I mean, obviously is retired. She started this organization that goes down with dental teams to Guatemala, and they say, I'll probably all choked up, but so they teach kids how to basically brush their teeth. Crazy, right? Don't drink Coke every day. These kids are drinking, 5 or 6 Cokes, rotting their teeth out. They weren't brushing their teeth. Things that you and I, things that all of us on this call take for granted. These kids are losing their teeth. You can't eat. You get sick, what have you. They had a poor quality of life, so they went down there, and we supported them in it. We last year it's crazy to say, we bought T-shirts for all of them. These blue T-shirts, and all the kids went crazy. They all wanted them. Everyone in the village wants them because they wanted to promote that. We do little things to help. I really think that I'm financially successful. I'm not rich, but I've been very blessed. I've worked hard for this, but I mean, I've made some good decisions, but I've been in the right place at the right time as well too. And now having the wherewithal to do this kind of stuff, I mean, I love it. I love it, and I encourage. I've worked with a number of charities, and I'll tell you, I worked with one called Denver Active 2030, and it was basically a children's charity, a consortium where we gave money to a variety of children's charities to have these kids come into our morning breakfast and say, I'm Susie, and my dad died when I was 10, and my mom's raising me alone, and I'm living in not the greatest area, but because of this organization, I was able to. I'm getting into college.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, man, there's not a dry eye in the place.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's cool. I mean, that's the thing is that I don't give it back for tax breaks. It's a very selfish thing for me. I want to know that I've had some impact, and I know I said it's selfish, but it is. I mean, it gives me that great feeling because that what I always tell these kids is that they'll say, well, what do we owe you? And I'm like, nothing. You only think, well, you do owe me one thing. You need to pay it forward. You need to pay it forward. And so anything that we do for you, when you get on your feet, when you get in a position where you can help people, do it. So my mom's organization, and I encourage everyone to support that. We put a link up on our social media. It is it's changing lives. Now the question I get, well, why aren't you doing this in the United States and so forth? Absolutely right. It's like, why are my friends, helping build wells in Africa? You got to figure out what your special, special passions for. Yeah. My mom got me into this, and I've never looked back. And I mean, and I think it's a wonderful organization. It's really helping people. And again, I think that that those of us who are successful with our time, with our finances, our resources, what have you. I personally, and I never force this on anybody, but I personally think it's our responsibility to pay it forward and to change the world in a positive way. I really do.
I do too, and I think most of us deep down want to make a difference while we're here on Earth. I mean, when it gets down to it, we can't be here just for ourselves. There has to be a bigger why, I think. And in the practices, I often say, why don't you come up with some kind of local mission that you can all wrap your minds around and help some local group. That would also help with your culture, but that's another story. So now let's just go to mindset. I hope everyone's catching how he's thinking, because you have that growth mindset. I don't know if you have to be born with it or you can grow it, but you can hear it. You read, you're open to ideas, you're talking to others, you're watching what happens, not just in our industry. I've always watched other industries and said, how can I bring that idea over to us in the plastic surgery arena? So, do you think you have to be born with it, or do you think you can grow one?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think it's that whole nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that, was it in your DNA, or is it, a product of your upbringing? I think for me, I always felt like I was the underdog, which I know is crazy, but I mean, I always felt like I didn't jump far enough. I didn't, I wasn't good looking enough. I wasn't smart enough, so I was one of those kids that knowledge didn't just come to me. I mean, I wasn't one of these guys I had friends that would study for an hour or two and they ace the test. And
I was not that person.
Oh, I mean, I'm sweating to death. I mean, I still, share a little thing. I mean, I still have dreams about going through residency and I haven't finished, and I missed the test or whatever. And the greatest thing is waking up and going, oh, wait a minute, I've been in practice for 20 years.
Oh, thank God, that was a dream.
That was a dream, thank God. But it's funny. I mean, I still have those inferiority dreams. I think a lot of successful people have those. But, what really motivated me? What motivated me is when I started taking risks and I started seeing the rewards.
Mm-hmm.
And you start, I think it's, it's that old, the saying that I said before, the journey of 1,000 miles means a single step. Most people are, they're not even taking a single step. They haven't even laced up their shoes. You got to do it. I mean, you just got to Nike, just do it. And, you're going to fail. I mean, there are going to be times, I can't tell you how many marketing schemes or whatever, or not schemes, but like marketing events, let's just say that.
Trust me, I've been behind half of those because I'm doing the same thing. You're trying to figure out what works and you're open to trying it. I don't look at it as failure. I look at it as a result. It just got me closer to where I needed to be. You'll never get anywhere if you're going to constantly let your fear take over. I have found that a lot. And the only way to get past the fear is to face it and go for it. And then your mind says, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. We can do that again.
I'll give you a good example. I probably about 8-9 years ago, I and a good buddy of mine, good college buddy of mine, we launched what we thought was going to be hugely successful. We thought it was basically going to be like the Huffington Post for wellness. It was called Be for Living. You can still look it up. And we had some interviews with people in London, I mean, all over the world, I mean, in health and wellness and so forth. But we couldn't figure out how to monetize it. I mean, and I have to say, I mean, when we shut it down, I was really disappointed. I felt like a failure. I'm like, I felt like one of these guys just talks to talk and, here's my business card because I'm running this business and so forth. What I learned in retrospect and looking back is it taught me valuable lessons, even though it was a complete failure. It was not a success. It was a failure. I mean, and I'll admit that. But it taught me various things, those keys that I basically take into my other businesses now. And if I hadn't done those things, it's called the School of Hard Knocks. It's called the School of Life. That's where we learn all this stuff. Yep. And so again, you can't look at these things and go, oh, God, I really failed that. Okay, maybe you did. Well, a failure is someone that doesn't learn from their mistakes. Okay. And again, failure is a starting point, not an end point. And you have to see it as that. I mean, it's you talk about the growth mindset. Totally agree with you. I mean, I try to get into flow. I try to kind of figure out what my goals are. I'm trying to, my fiance would love it if I carry through a little bit more on this, but, I'm trying to get into meditation, really trying to,
me too.
Trying to kind of think about things. I'm using an app right now called Calm, which is wonderful.
Yes. I'm using Headspace.
Yeah, Headspace is a great one too. Yeah. But it's really, it's really kind of looking within and it's trying to, it's not like I spent one of my favorite days. I went with a good friend of mine, and I spent a whole day chanting with Buddhist monks,
Oh my
okay,
God.
and meditating. Or not chanting, but meditating with them. And what I learned from them though is Buddhist meditation. You don't sit there and you try to drive everything out. You
Hmm.
actually let it go through you.
Yeah.
You actually let it go through you. So if you hear a dog barking, you're not like, okay, tone that dog out.
Hmm.
You notice there's a dog, but you're not perseverating. You're not so fixed. But what you're doing is, you're trying to basically let the things from every day go on around you, but be very, very focused. You're not blocking them out. You're
Yeah.
just becoming part of them, but you're also very focused.
You're just aware. And I am desperately trying to live in consciousness, and it is a trip trying to do that and live in this world at the same time.
It's
So
hard.
kudos for anybody who can figure that out, because it's mind-boggling. So the
Well,
last question is, because my computer is acting up because I think it's getting over an hour or something and it's freaking out. So let me ask you this, so I don't lose you. Tell us something that we don't know about you that is pretty interesting.
Um, so I'm a plastic surgeon that never wanted to be a plastic surgeon,
Oh.
and I grew up in a household where my father would pass out if we pulled our teeth. Okay, so we had loose teeth. I hated blood. In medical school, I went to Georgetown Medical School. The night before my phlebotomy course, I mean, literally, I couldn't sleep. I mean, I don't think I slept a wink. I was so terrified. I mean, I hate getting my blood drawn. I'm actually, my staff laugh at me. I've gotten better now. And I'm a surgeon. I
Wow.
mean, that's crazy.
Wow.
But I was afraid of blood. But you know what? What's funny though is what overcame that though is I did a surgery rotation and I absolutely fell in love with the
Huh.
human body. I mean, the human body is so amazing. It's kind of like a car enthusiast. Do they just look at the outside? No. What's the first thing they do? Pop the hood. You want to see the engine. You want to see the internal workings. I get to do that literally on a daily basis, and it's so cool. So, I mean, I would say, something that people don't know about me. I've had so many twists and turns in my life, and I don't see them as bad. I think they truly made me who I am, and without them, I've been able to share the podium with, I mean, some amazing people, and I pretty much have zero academic papers. I mean, I'm not big in the societies or anything like that,
Mhm.
but I mean, I sit on about 12, 13, 14 advisory boards. I mean, some pretty high level ones. I've launched products. I mean, for what? Well, basically, I'm the guy in the back of the room that says the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say it. If you talk to a lot of these companies, they'll tell you I'm a naysayer. You
Mhm.
know, but what I always believe in though is if you're going to bring a problem, if you're going to bring a criticism,
Mhm.
you bring a solution.
For sure.
And I always do that when I'm advising. That's something we're doing the consulting. I love consulting because I love building out ideas. I'm an ideas person.
Mhm.
They call it a creator. It's someone that basically likes to create ideas, has vision, whatever. That's something I really enjoy doing. But I also try to look at things from all around, and I think that's what my humanities education has really allowed me to do. It was one of the best things, one of the best decisions I ever made is actually going a little bit different route. I mean, I chose to be corny. I took the path less traveled, the road less traveled, to quote Robert Frost,
Mhm.
and it's made all the difference. So it has, and I would challenge anyone out there, challenge yourself on a regular basis. Don't we get so comfortable in our status quo. Challenge yourself because if you don't challenge yourself, you're treading water, and life is way too short for that.
For sure. Those are great. That's a great exit. You can't say much more than that. But thank you so much. It has been a pleasure watching you grow in this industry. You're doing all the right things, and the real estate in Colorado's got to be great. So you probably made a good investment there.
Right.
So thank you so much for being on. And everybody, if you got a lot out of this, please do me a favor. Head over to Beauty and the Biz and subscribe, and then leave me a review if you feel so inclined. And then if you have any feedback for, Dr. Buford, how can they get a hold of you if they wanted to?
Yeah. So anyone that wants to get a hold of me, probably the best way is my direct email.
Okay.
It's Buford at beautybybuford.com. You can also follow us. Our handle is at beautybybuford on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook too. I'm not using it that much, but feel free to reach out to me. I mean, I have people reaching out all the time. I don't have all the bandwidth in the world, but I do love supporting up and coming surgeons, non-surgeons, what have you, PAs, RNs. If you have questions, what have you, it's all. I think one of the richest things that I've enjoyed over the years, as a speaker is developing these relationships. Being able to call up someone and say, hey, this is Greg Buford. I met you at a conference in XYZ, and the phone actually gets answered, and I get to talk to wonderful people, and it's just having this ability to communicate is just wonderful.
Well, thanks so much, and I really hope we start traveling again, and I see you at one of these meetings. For heaven's sakes, we've got to get back out there. But anyway, thank you. And if you have any questions for me, please reach out to me at CatherineMaley.com, or you can certainly DM me at Catherine Maley MBA via Instagram. And with that, thanks so much, and we'll talk again.
We hope you found valuable insight on this episode of Beauty in the Biz. For more episodes, tools, and Catherine's free book, visit www.catherinemaley.com. That's www.catherinemaley.com. And be sure to subscribe to get the latest practice building strategies delivered to you. And don't forget to share this Beauty in the Biz podcast with your staff and colleagues.